Our next guest is a woman that has achieved a lot in her life, and she actually has a very interesting backstory that I think a lot of you are going to resonate with. She doesn't have all of what many of us have of childhood struggles that kind of built this foundation for us to then achieve things later on in life. She actually had a good, smooth childhood, according to her, but she had a interesting life event that happened as an adult that really shaped her path, which you're going to really, I think, enjoy. So she is a #1 best-selling author, speaker, and coach. She first began her online brand over 8 years ago. She discovered a passion for helping others and has spent years honing and developing her vast internet marketing skills. Since then, she has appeared on numerous stages, spoken on countless podcasts, and is frequently invited to conduct exclusive trainings for top industry leaders. Please welcome Mrs. Chantelle Turner. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Good Side. I'm here with Mrs. Chantelle. Chantelle, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to The Good Side. I have had some really strong recommendations for you. Heard a lot about you. Excited to dive into you and your world. So without further ado, why don't I just ask you first, where did you grow up? Where are you from?
Yeah, so I was born in Long Island, New York. And even though I left there when I was about a year old, so I can't really claim it. There's like New Yorker in my blood. Every time I talk to somebody from the East Coast, they're like, "You're from New York, right?" I was like, well, kind of. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, so the absolute opposite side. A very large, like 1 million people, small town, no freeways. Grew up there, went to the University of Arizona, so anybody that went there, bear down. And then lived in Seattle for a couple years, and now I'm in Phoenix. So kind of all over, but grew up in Tucson.
That's awesome. I'm not the best on this, but you almost have an East Coast accent. Do you have family out there still, or how did that happen?
I do have family, like probably half the population of New York's related to me. I'm Italian, so I think like we're all just kind of related out there. So I definitely have family, but also my dad has a very strong New York accent. My mom did growing up, but she like went to speech class to get rid of her New York accent. So I think I didn't travel there much growing up. I think it's in me. It's in me.
That's awesome. Cool. And then I also just kind of pick up on, I think people from the East Coast in general, not a bad thing at all, but they just speak faster than somebody like me, right? So I'm not sure how everybody else speaks in Arizona, but I'm guessing you've heard that before maybe.
I talk fast. In fact, years ago, I spoke on the Two Comma Club cruise with Russell and a couple of people. I had 20 minutes to do an entire presentation, so I talked as fast as I possibly could. And people were like, "That was so good, but you spoke so fast." And I was talking to Russell afterwards, walking across the ship, and I mentioned it to him, and he goes, "Oh, I thought you spoke at a normal speed." He goes, "Maybe I just listen fast." And I feel like because he speaks so fast, and I tried to slow down once. It was physically painful for me. So this is the speed we go.
You know what's funny? One of the best things I've heard him say about that is maybe it wasn't him, someone else in the room. They were talking about it and they're like, "Oh, you just talk too fast." And then someone's like, "No, you need to listen faster." And I was like, ding, ding, ding. So I love your speed because I could watch a video of you talking and I wouldn't have to hit 1.5x speed. I could watch it normally and I could get through it. But so anyway, kudos to you. I think it's great.
I'm on 1.5 or 2 speed for all audiobooks, all video content that I watch. If I can't speed something up, I'm like, I think I'm just not consuming this content.
That's awesome. Same. Absolutely same. So let me ask you a little bit more about like, what was your childhood like? So you moved into Arizona when you were 1. What was it like?
So I would say I had a relatively good childhood. My parents are divorced. Both have remarried, and they were divorced when I was like 3. So not a lot of trauma around that. But my dad remarried earlier when I was about 5, and she already had a daughter. We were about 6 months apart. We were not friends. It was like, you stole my dad, you stole my mom. There was some animosity there. So there was a little bit of that growing up. And then when I was about 12, my mom got remarried. Oh, my dad and my stepmom had another kid. So I've got a half brother on that side. And then my mom had another kid. So I've got a half brother on that side. So I was an only original child. Life was great. And then I became a middle child, and that was rough. But we grew up with money. I think most people would consider us wealthy. My dad's always been an entrepreneur, so he did a lot. He had a lot of success. He also had plenty of failures. Currently, and for the last maybe 20 years, has built custom homes, like big multi-million-dollar custom homes. And he just one day decided he wanted to do it, figured out how to be a contractor, and then did it. There was no like years of learning and background. And he was just like, I'm going to do this thing. So that was cool. But also my mom was always like very well employed, grounded, and taught me a lot about like financial responsibility. And even though we had a lot of money growing up, especially on my dad's side, we were never just handed stuff. I had a job at 15. So I think I had a good balance, but definitely not the hardship that I think so many entrepreneurs especially have been through.
Sure. So with that, there's a couple of things I want to sort of unravel. So, you said that you maybe didn't have the hardships that most entrepreneurs probably can relate to. I'm sure you had your fair share of things, but what drives you then? Because a lot of entrepreneurs that succeed will credit the hardship growing up. So what's your kind of passion and drive? Where did that get foundationally brought?
Yeah, so I definitely had some emotional challenges with my stepmom. We're in a good place now, but growing up was an emotional challenge. We won't get into it because it's just not my story to share. It's definitely, but what really brought me into entrepreneurship. So I went to college. I have a degree in theater arts. I loved theater. I grew up in theater. I wanted to be an actress and a singer, but realized I was probably going to be broke trying to like make it on Broadway. And I like money. So that was not going to be the career path for me. And started in like the backstage side of things, learning all the technical. And that's what I went to college for. And then did that outside of college and got a job basically in corporate America. I ran a theater for a couple years and then was doing audiovisual sales inside a hotel. Was with my husband. We got pregnant. We had our daughter. And when she was born, she had a stroke during birth, an in utero stroke just before she was born. So a whole bunch went down there. Well, you can dig into it if you want, but I won't go into it at the moment. And that was my hardship. We landed ourselves with about $100,000 in medical debt that was not covered by our insurance. My husband was working 80 hours or flying about 80% of the year for his work. So he was gone all the time. I was basically single parenting a child with special needs. We were living here in Phoenix. My family's in Tucson, which is 2 hours away. So they weren't exactly able to help a lot. And financially, I had a good job. He had a good job. It did not cover those bills. We were not prepared. So I had to figure out how to make another income, but I couldn't get another job because I was already leaving her in daycare from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., which was their whole time. So I turned to the internet and I became an entrepreneur out of that journey. So I didn't have the hardships growing up that I think a lot of entrepreneurs might go through. I had it later in life. But I will say I'm so grateful if you could say you're grateful for your kid to have a stroke. Obviously, I wish it didn't happen, but I'm such a better person because of that. I have an incredible life and I view life so differently because of that. And so today she's 9 years old, not today, but like she's 9 years old now and she's doing really well. So all of it, comes to a good point, and that's how I ended up here.
That's awesome. I want to commend you for that. I definitely want to get into more of the details on your daughter in a second, but I just wanted kind of, I guess, if we could really focus on that moment that you realize, things aren't going as planned, and you needed to step up, and where that motivation came from. Can you kind of describe that? Because prior to that, I'm guessing you didn't have that sense of urgency. You were living in a different way. So could you just walk us through that kind of enlightenment?
Yes. So I've always had the unique ability. I make the joke that I have the emotional range of a cucumber. So I have all of the emotions that the rest of people have, but I have them for very short spans of time, except for happy. I'm generally like bubbly, happy, energetic most of the time. And when something is challenging or hard or upsetting or makes me sad, I process it very quickly. And then I'm an incredibly logical thinker. So my next step is like, okay, that's the problem. Where is the solution? Like, how do we find it? So, we were met with this challenge. It's a horrible story. It was presented to us horribly. It was incredibly shocking, but I am so grateful that my husband and I really came together in that moment. A lot of times, and I worked with families with special needs kids for years, and that can really pull people apart. It pushed us together. We were already close, but definitely came together. We were on the same page. And out of the necessity, I've always been able to have a little bit of success with anything I put my mind to. I'm just very driven in small bursts. So I will go after something. I will run super hard. I actually almost failed out of college because I was only taking like 12 units my first semester and just didn't really put that much effort into it. And so I had the choice to like drop out or kind of stick it out. And I had an opportunity to do an internship at Sony Studios. Could have been super cool. But instead I was like, I'm going to get this done as quickly as humanly possible because I hate college. How fast can I do it? And so I did my entire 4-year degree, theater arts degree with a minor in pre-law in 2 years, the whole thing. And I took like 21 units a semester. I did summer school. I took additional credits at the community college and I aced everything. And in that moment, I learned about myself that if I am like stupid busy and just running full steam ahead, I get everything done because there's no time to procrastinate. I can't put it off. I have to do it and I do it well. And so I kind of took that mentality with everything that was going on with my daughter. And I was like, okay, here's the problem. How do we get her the most, help? How do we get her into specialists? How do we like deal with our I'm not going to be broke and homeless. Like, how do I deal with that? And so just kind of ran full speed ahead in every direction to figure out how to solve that problem.
Wow. So you're very much a, let's solve this and move on. You're not a person that overthinks and dwells and has to sit in it or, maybe feels bad for themselves, et cetera. You're just focused on the solution. Is that right?
When it comes to a problem, I am absolutely focused on a solution. I also love to overthink things. So definitely that flaw. It's, I have internal conversations with myself all day long. I overthink the shit out of stuff. I think the difference is I don't let that overthinking hold me back. So it's still there. I'm still having all of those fears and doubts and thoughts and worries and questions and like what ifs. But at the same time, I also logically know that me worrying about something isn't going to change the outcome. I have to actually do something. And so I'll just go ahead and do it. Like, even if it scares me.
For sure.
Hey, I want to take a quick second to talk about today's show sponsor. So first is the Therapy Farm. So therapyfarm.com is an online community that is bringing kids that are suffering with illnesses or ailments or just otherwise are struggling, and it connects them virtually to folks that own animals. And what happens is they'll have every week they'll get together and they'll spend some time digitally via a video chat. And what's really cool about it is it gives the child that maybe is going through an illness, even a terminal illness, or just is struggling developmentally or behaviorally, it gives them something to look forward to every single week, puts a smile on their face, and actually impacts the whole family in a really positive way. And it's 100% on the back of volunteers that volunteer time with their animals, and it's a really special place. So if you feel it on you to help kind of contribute to that cause, head over to therapyfarm.com. You can make a donation. You can volunteer yourself and your animal, or you can even nominate a child that you know that could use that free service. So 100% free service for kids, sick kids, struggling kids to put a little special animal connection in their life. So go over to therapyfarm.com. The next sponsor I want to talk about is if you are ever in the need for apparel printing or accessories, hats, jackets, jerseys, sports team jerseys, work uniforms, corporate gifts, etc. Everything you can think of. My friends over at 1-800-T-Shirts would love to help you. And I've got a special deal if you go over to if you call 1-800-T-Shirts, tell them the Good Side sent you, or go over to 1-800-T-Shirts.com, use promo code Good Side, and they're going to give you a special deal and take good care of you. So 1-800-T-Shirts is a Midwest-based company. I know the founder personally. They're an amazing company, and they'll take really good care of you on your next T-shirt. This is more than T-shirts. It's everything. So apparel, you name it, they can take care of you. No orders too small, no orders too large. They can even set you up with an online store, which is what I use personally. It's amazing. They take care of everything. So go over to 1-800-T-Shirts, call 1-800-T-Shirts, or go to 1-800-T-Shirts.com and get all of your apparel and printing needs taken care of. So again, I want to thank the sponsors, therapyfarm.com, 1-800-T-Shirts.com, and here's the rest of the episode.
For sure. That's awesome. That's something that people really need to do more of, I think. And we could probably go on a whole rant there, but I want to come back to a point you made where you said you have the emotional range of a cucumber, and that you're very logical and you kind of think logically and So that leads me to a question for you. Are you sure you're Italian?
Yeah, I'm 50% Italian.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna the stereotype may not always be true. I'm gonna transition that into a random question for you, and that is, what is a food that you absolutely love?
Ooh, sushi. Like if you were like, you can only have one food, I guess, group, right? It's not really an item, but one food group for the rest of your life, like sushi, hands down, love it.
Awesome. Do you have any go-to rolls?
Yeah, so there's two actually, but my favorite is probably a sunshine roll. And I don't know if it's called a sunshine roll if you go to every sushi restaurant, because I feel like some places like make up a name for shit and then you try to order it somewhere else and they're like, we've never heard of that. But it's basically kind of like a Philly roll, but without the cream cheese. So like salmon, cucumber, rice, seaweed, and then it has thin slices of salmon on top and a very thin shaved piece of lemon. So you get this like really bright lemony with the salmon, and absolutely my favorite. I put a little ponzu sauce on top. Delicious.
Wow, that is amazing. I haven't heard of that exactly, but I feel like I could probably piece it together if I like mapped it out. But I don't know if you meant it this way, but I will say I absolutely think there is no place for cream cheese in sushi whatsoever. And I'm sorry if that's an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, no, not a fan.
Doesn't belong there. It's not a bagel.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So my wife and I love sushi. We have to, like, here's the difference between me and probably the rest of the world. How far do you have to drive to get to a good sushi spot there?
So it is Arizona, so we say that with a little bit of caution when we eat our sushi. But there's a place about 10 minutes down the road from me. It's called Sushi Creek, and this is how much I love sushi. Their service is shit. Like it's terrible, and I literally will tell people to go to that sushi restaurant because their sushi is so good that I'm like, you have to go here, and just know when you go, the service is shit, so that you're not disappointed. Like the service is terrible, but the food is so good. So we go as often as we can.
That's awesome. And then people still, I feel like when you tell people that, you warn them, they still get hung up on it. It's like, you're there for the sushi. Don't focus on, put blinders on if you have to.
Yeah, no, I warned you. They're like, oh yeah, it was really like the service was really slow, and I'm like, I literally told you it's terrible. You're not there for service. You're there for really good sushi. And it's
exactly.
cheap. It's super cheap comparatively. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. We drive probably about 45 minutes for one, and now I'm in the Midwest, so it's probably not even, shouldn't be on the radar of anyone, but we like it, and we don't get sick after. So I can get down on some sushi too. That sounds awesome. If we're ever in Phoenix, we'll invite you guys out, and we'll have to let you guys guide us. But let's hop back over into, I want to hear a little bit about kind of your, what are your top life accomplishments?
That's a tough one. My top life accomplishment by far is my daughter, which part of me feels weird taking credit for like somebody else. Because like she's incredible all on her own. There is definitely like a lot of work that I've done, and people are always like, you've done so much for her and she's like so amazing because of you. And I'm like, absolutely. I'm not discounting what I've done. But she also is in her own right. Like she's very driven. She is incredibly driven by praise. So like, what a simple thing to be able to give a child. Like she doesn't want a ton of like stuff or gifts, or if you just tell her she did a good job and you're proud of her, that's like, she'll happily work her ass off for that. So I think that that's so cool. And because of that, she's doing so well with all the challenges that she's faced. But yes, I will take the accomplishment of, because she sees how hard we work, because I am so driven. I think she gets a lot of that from me. And honestly, the outcome that she could have right now could be really bad. She could be doing horribly. She's doing so well because of all of the work that I did and continue to do. She's in therapy, 2 therapies a day, every single day of the week. We sit and do homework every night together. She's in a charter school. Like she wouldn't have the future life opportunities that she has if she was, if I wasn't the person that was so driven to help her have that. So she's my biggest accomplishment.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. You don't really know until you become a parent, I think, or you don't, at least for me, I didn't respect it the way that I needed to. But I want to, if you're okay with it, I want to kind of walk through this situation because it has so much impact on your life. And I think you said earlier, you don't wish that happened, but you're grateful for it, right? So go back to the beginning, and especially like looking at this through the context or the lens of like if you have any sort of insights or tips or anything for some parent out there that may possibly never go through this, but to know that this is possible, or someone else could, or even someone that may end up in a situation like this. Can you walk us through kind of the beginning of it, the backstory, and kind of leading up into what happened?
Absolutely. So actually, it's funny you say like it's different when you become a parent, because I didn't want to have kids originally. I was not the babysitting type growing up. Like I was not a kid person. And when I met my husband, obviously like you find that partner that you see having a life with, and like things can change, and he really wanted kids. So we did it with intent. We actually like intentionally made a baby, but I definitely was not the person that was like, I'm going to be a great mom. And I was a judgy non-parent. I was that person that was like, oh, you're complaining that your kid sleeps in your bed all the time. That's your own fault for allowing that. As a parent, I'm like, oh, if I can get some sleep, she can sleep wherever she wants, right? Like, I don't care as long as I sleep. So definitely changed based on becoming a parent. But in 2012, my husband and I, we had gotten married. We had been married for about a year, and we decided we were ready to start a family. We got pregnant right away, which I honestly feel so fortunate. My sister went through a lot of infertility challenges, so I know how hard that is. And so I have a lot of gratitude around how easy it was for me to get pregnant. Had a perfect pregnancy. She was always on the smaller side, but she was healthy. Everything checked out. Like everything was good the whole time. I followed every single rule that they said. They were like, you can't drink coffee. Don't even have a sip of wine. Like, don't eat deli meat, right? I did it all. I was so good. And I went into labor at 38 weeks, 5 days, which is full term. At 37, you're good to go. So everything was normal there. Started having contractions in the middle of the night. And I was like, they tell you you're going to be in labor for a long time. My mom did 24 hours with me and my brother. So I was prepared. And so I was like, I don't want to, it's like 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, I'm not going to wake anybody. You know, I start looking at the clock, timing them out. Anyway, end up, my water breaks, wake my husband, we go to the hospital, and I am just in a ridiculous amount of pain, and I have a really high pain tolerance. But like also, who knows how painful it is to have a baby? It's like maybe normal. And we get to the hospital, and they put a little fetal monitor on, and every time I had a contraction, her heart would stop beating. And so when we originally checked in, they told us it'd probably be, I wasn't very dilated. So they were like, it's going to be 15 hours of labor. I was like, that sounds fun. And then by the time they got us into a room and realized that her heart rate was having these issues, they came in and said, we think you should do an emergency C-section. I was like, well, you're the doctor. If you think that we should do that, like, let's go. So we did an emergency C-section. I was so high on drugs because I had asked for an epidural when we got there. They missed. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could miss that, but you can miss. So I got 2 epidurals. And then shortly after they took me to surgery, so they give you more drugs. So I was like, I remember it all. I thought it was so funny. They were doing that C-section, and I was like, well, you're down there. If you just do a little lipo and like some ab work, like, can you give me some abs? They're like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. I thought it was funny. They got her out, and they said everything was fine. Her APGAR, which is like the test that they give babies right when they're born, her scores were good. They said she's healthy. We don't know what was going on, but everything's fine. And they took us to recovery. They put us in a room. My family came up from Tucson. Life was good for like 3 hours. And then she wasn't breastfeeding well, totally normal, first-time mom, super common. And her temperature was a little bit low. And because she wasn't breastfeeding well, her blood sugar was a little low. So they took her to the nursery to feed her and warm her up. And during that time, her pediatrician did rounds, which is, again, super normal. They come, they look at the baby for the first time. And he looked at her and said, I don't know what's wrong, but something is wrong with this baby and she needs to be in the NICU. And everyone, doctors, nurses, everything's like, you're crazy, she's fine, everything's normal. And he's like, no, take her right now. So I just had an emergency C-section. The NICU's 2 floors up. I can't go. My husband goes with her. And within 20 minutes of her being up there and on monitors, she had 2 apneic episodes, which stopped her breathing. So thank God she's already in the NICU. They revived her right away, which is fantastic. If she had been with us, who knows what could have happened. So again, gratitude there. And then it was 3 days of trying to figure out what happened. Like, why is this child having apneic episodes? They did an EEG and found out she was having seizures. They did a CT and eventually an MRI. And the neurologist came down to our room after 3 days, after us like waiting for hours to get these results. Finally comes to our room. My parents are sitting across from us. My husband and I are sitting on the bed. And he opens this red folder. He pulls out a scan. He circles a dark spot on her brain scan. And he says, "Do you see this dark spot right here? That portion of her brain is dead. Your daughter had a stroke. She's got cerebral palsy. And yeah, it's pretty bad." Just like that. Super old man, super deadpan. Like, that's what happened. That portion of your kid's brain is dead. And of course, we're shocked. We're trying to process. We have questions. One of the questions we asked is like, what does that mean? I've heard cerebral palsy, but like, what does that mean? And so he proceeded to physically act out what it might look like for our child to walk. And he said, if she ever walks, the most devastating moment of my life, to first baby, not really know what's going on, and to have him physically act out what cerebral palsy might look like.
That's one of the most insensitive things, not to interrupt, that's one of the most insensitive things I've ever heard. I'm so sorry that happened. Wow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We fired him off of our service. I will never work with that man again. But we pulled ourselves together and we said, well, whatever it is, like we're just gonna do the best that we can for her. We're gonna get her all the help that we can. She was in the NICU for 11 days. And during that time, we were incredibly fortunate. So we were one of like 5 or 6 babies in the NICU, but the only parents. And that broke my heart. There are so many reasons why other parents weren't up there. Mostly they have other like kids that they have to also take care of. They have jobs. Just a lot of reasons. But because of that, we became really close with all the NICU staff. And the neonatologist, which is like the doctor in charge of the NICU, she really became a close like friend of ours during that 11 days and said, she was like, I work with the wife of a doctor who's at a completely different hospital group, but he is a neurologist that has a specialty in neonatal stroke. And he's like the only one in the Western Hemisphere with this specialty. He doesn't take clinic patients, only like if you're hospitalized with him. She goes, but let me call his wife and see if I can like get you in. So she pulls this favor that you would only pull for your absolute best friend, gets us into this guy who's an incredible neurologist. And well, the top doctors know all the other top doctors. So as soon as we get in with him, he gets us in with all of these other incredible specialists. And the first 3 years of my daughter's life are a million times different than they could have been, simply because that woman went out on a limb for us. So again, like back to gratitude. I am so grateful that she did that for us. And that just completely changed the trajectory, I think, of where my daughter is today. So today she's in mainstream school. She's actually at a charter school. She's doing very well. She has her challenges. I always tell people, like, the rest of us are on the freeway and she's just taking the scenic route. She gets there. It just takes her longer. But she walks, she runs, she jumps, she climbs. She definitely has deficits in her right side, especially like limited use of her right hand, but gets better at it every day. And I think that by the time she's an adult, most people would probably not notice that she's different. So pretty cool.
Wow. That is amazing. Your resilience and your focus on solutions is absolutely to credit for where you guys are. And I think I want to say, too, I want to commend your husband's strength throughout that process, especially in that moment with that terrible doctor. And I think... and I want to focus, because this is the good side, and I want to focus on the good side. So tell me a little bit about your daughter, some of the inspiration that you've seen throughout this whole entire process in her 9 years, some of the most inspiring things you've seen out of her.
Yeah, so even early on, like she didn't walk till she was 2.5, which is late. Normally kids are walking around a year to 14 months. And just her resilience, she never crawled, but she figured out how to get around scooting. And when she started walking, she was definitely off, and she was just always a really happy child. She just truly works hard. It is hard work to force yourself to like use a part of your body that you don't have full control over. But she'll take the time to focus and to try and use her right hand. She was constantly praised and still is by her therapist for like how hard she works, how good she is. Like, that has has done so much. So I'm so, blessed that she does have that personality. But you also mentioned, my husband, and he's been so incredible. Early on in the journey, when she was about 2, I started a group for special needs parents called Stronger Mommy, with the focus on, I had all of this knowledge of all the resources that I had found. We got her into state funding. So her entire medical history is now covered by Arizona. We pay nothing for all of her medical needs, which gives us the ability to live the life that we would be living if we had a mainstream child. So we are so fortunate, because otherwise we would literally continue to be under mountains of debt, or have to choose between her getting the services that she needs or our bills. And so I wanted to help other parents get those benefits, and I started that group to help them. And what I learned very early on was that a lot of the dads especially are not as supportive, are not that helpful. And this is true, sadly, across all families, not just special needs. There's plenty of incredible dads out there, so don't get me wrong, but there's also a lot that they do have that mentality of well, I went to work, so it's your job to care for the kids and make food. And my husband works his butt off. He is amazing, but he also cooks any night that he's home. He travels a lot, so anytime he's home, he cooks for us every night. We used to do a trade, right? You cooked, I'll clean. I feel like that's fair, since most women are doing both. I'll do half. But he knows how much homework my daughter has, so he's go do homework, I'll clean up, it's fine, go get that started. He supports everything that I want to do, so that I'm not just a mom to a child that has special needs. I get to be a wife, I get to be a friend, I get to be an entrepreneur, I get to do all of these incredible things in my life because he's so supportive of me, and sometimes even more supportive of me than I am. So, on the good side of things, I am just honestly so grateful to have someone that is so supportive and has walked this crazy but blissful journey with me.
Wow, that's so cool. He sounds amazing. Sounds like the kind of guy I want to get to know and have some sushi with for sure. So tell me a little bit more about Stronger Mommy and kind of what that. Obviously, we know the backstory, but tell me a little bit more about the mission of that and kind of where that's at.
Yeah. At the moment, it's really just a support group. It was a business for a little while, but I found that I was attracting, so this is not true of all parents who have kids with special needs, I was attracting the type of parent with a child who has special needs that was more focused on complaining about the problem and living in the problem than looking for a solution. And as a solution-based human being, it is very hard for me to work with someone who doesn't want to find a solution. So I got burnt out. I got really frustrated. I got burnt out. And I said, especially in trying to turn that into a business, it wasn't bringing in an income. I didn't feel like I was giving my all because I was burnt out. So instead I turned it into a passion project, and it's a support group of about 3,000. There are a couple dads, but mostly moms who all have children with all sorts of different special needs and challenges, from ADHD to Down syndrome and everything in between. And it's a great place for people to ask questions and feel supported and feel like other people get them. And I'm glad that it's become that, instead of me trying to continue to struggle to make a business out of it, because now it gets to be a place of happiness and joy instead of anger and frustration.
For sure. Absolutely. That's really cool. And for you to stick it out after seeing that side of it is even more cool. I'm sure there's an element where people just, as the mom or the parent, I'm sure there's a need for you to vent and to get things off your chest as well. And it sounds like maybe that's where people are aiming that, and that's not the right place. That's not the point of it, but that's an important piece of it too. But I want to tell you that, big picture, I feel blessed being connected to you. And we can talk a little bit more offline about this, but one of the show sponsors in my passion project is just getting up and running, and that is the virtual therapy farm. So I would love to talk to you about that, because we have a cool resource for kids just like that. And so I just feel blessed being able to connect with you. So you said some things about business. Now I want to transition into kind of what you do now, and you and your husband actually, and it sounds like you guys are in the event space. So tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Yeah. So, obviously background in theater arts for years. And my husband actually, was on tours and, musical tours and concerts, and did that for years. I got into rigging, which is where you hang all the stuff in the air for the concerts, and lighting and all of that. And so, with that background, we kind of for a number of years, well, I worked, and then when I started my own business, obviously completely left that industry. But he continued to stay in that industry, and eventually started his own business, which has kind of become our business, in doing live events. And so we do really high-end technical production for live events, mostly events similar to Funnel Hacking Live. So that type of scale is what we do. We work with companies like ServiceNow, Amazon, Oracle, those types of companies, and we do a lot of their really, really big meetings. And it's so much fun, so much work. And this year, 2023, has been a focus of, we've done really well with these bigger companies. And so now we're focused on, in addition to those clients, bringing in clients that are maybe smaller, but like have that vision of growth in the future, getting their events started, but from a really high end standpoint. So I think there's like this disparity between the really big companies that are doing these incredible events that knock people over, and people are just like talking about them right? People talk about how cool Funnel Hacking Live was for months and years. But you go to an event for maybe a person that's got a couple hundred people that follow them. They do an event and it's like one kind of half falling over screen projector, and you leave kind of feeling like, I got some good info, but like there's no wow factor. So we're kind of trying to bridge that gap and give that wow factor back to like the little guys that are trying to be big guys and are eventually going to get there, but are just kind of getting started in the event space. So that's our 2023 goal. But yeah.
That's so cool. So me personally, if anybody's out there that's listening or watching this and is either considering getting into events or is looking to step their event game up, I can tell you personally, I'm sure you've heard this one before. If someone were to ask me what is the most stressful thing I've ever done in my business, my honest answer is hosting live events, especially like trying to do big ones with hundreds of people. For me, that's big. For some, that's not. But that is by far the most stressful thing I have ever personally had to do. It is absolutely crazy. Do you do the whole thing from start to finish, including like negotiating with the venues and all that stuff too?
So we absolutely can. And when we work with smaller clients, for sure, because that's very common that they don't have someone that fills that role. I worked in hotels for a number of years, so I have that background as well. I actually worked on events in hotels. But a lot of our bigger clients will have what they call a producer. So somebody handling all of the hotel side, bringing in talent, the schedule. But if you'll aside from the stress of trying to coordinate with the hotel, deal with the contract, make sure you're getting a fair negotiation and all of that, once you're at the actual event, especially if you're the person that's putting it on, right? You're the speaker on stage, your people are there to see you. The moment of huge letdown is when stuff doesn't work, when the technology doesn't work and you look bad and you are literally in front of everyone and your microphone's squeaking or the slides aren't working, all of that. So we pride ourselves on not having those technical issues, having really good technical events. And so we can do everything, but our specialty is making sure that in that moment where you need to shine, you're not being let down by the technology.
That's amazing. And having lived through this and done many times the wrong way, I'll tell you right now, if anybody's thinking about, is it worth the fee? Because obviously I hope you're not cheap to hire. Good. So for her to have the insight, first of all, hotels are not, they're not your friend in this process. You think they would be nice and overly giving to you because you're bringing people to them. No, they're going to try to get everything they can out of you. It's crazy, actually. I saw that firsthand. I was like, wow. So for example, we got a bill. We had a 2-day event with 200 people, and we got a bill for $2,500 for coffee that we didn't ask for. And not only that, I'm like, you guys, 80% of the room was Mormon, and they didn't even drink it. So how is this happening? So there's stuff like that. Don't give the $2,500 to the hotel. Give it to Chantelle and her team, or the $10,000 or whatever it is they're going to end up getting gouged on. And then also to your point, something that's really I found out later on in my events is the tech side is very important, not just for the obvious attendee experience, but also to look and feel the part for high-level talent to come and collaborate with you and for you to get speakers. And what's even cooler is I think back to, a friend of mine, Steve Larson. He always went really above and beyond in his events, and I spoke at several of them. And what that made me do is it made me want to go there and do it and not charge a fee. but also it made me want to record those. And I still use the recordings from those events, and I still use the pictures and stuff from those events because it's such high quality. So not only are you going to give the attendee an amazing experience, but think of the bigger picture with the people that you invite to speak and come and join you at the event. This is going to give them an opportunity to actually want to, create content there at your event and to be a part of the event because it is such a high-end, high-level, really well-produced thing. So I lived through that and wasted a lot of money, but I know you know that very well, that side of it. But do you want to just speak to, I guess, the anything that I just brought up and give it actual some more background or credibility?
Yeah, well, I love Steve, and Steve's a great example because he really does put a lot of money and effort into his events. Even his very first Offermind was at such a higher level than most people I know do for their first event out of the gate, because it's scary. It's a lot of money, and you're putting out that money most of the time before you've even sold a single ticket. So in your mind, you're risking a lot. Am I even going to cover my costs? Forget make money. Am I even going to come close to covering my expenses, right? So kudos to Steve, because he's always gone above and beyond. I love him. I think he's great. And I think he learned a lot from Russell and the quality of event that Russell puts on. And I think that's, you talked about all these different aspects. There's so much value that can come from having a professionally produced event, aside from the stress and headache being off of your shoulders, which as the main presenter, if you're worried about all of that other stuff, you're not able to give the best presentation. There's just so much going on. If you're worried about what everyone else is doing, how are you focused on your presentation and giving all of yourself to your audience? You're just not. And then all of a sudden, tech starts to go wrong, and now you're even more focused and stressed on what's going wrong. It throws you off your game. It hurts your performance, and it hurts what your audience, your people there receive, especially if you're doing a pitch. That's the worst, is if you're trying to go into a pitch, that's your moment, right? To recap all that money, make some profit, really bring some people into your program, and something goes wrong. The microphone starts squeaking. The slides aren't working right? You can't get to your slide that has the actual offer stack. That's a huge problem. And then you talked about, getting talent there, and absolutely, if you don't have a high quality production, you might get somebody there that first time because they didn't know it wasn't going to be high quality. Getting them back or getting new people is really hard. And so when you can have a really good quality, professionally produced looking event, you can have, we've got photographers and videographers, and we record and all of that. You can have that B-roll and content and all of that to give back. It's a lot easier to get people to come year, to get higher paid speakers that will come, like you said, at no fee or even less of a fee. So I think the hard part for most people, and you mentioned it, you're I hope you're not cheap. We are not the cheapest by far. We're probably not the most expensive. We definitely try to stay competitive within our market. But my goal is not to be cheap. My goal is to be amazing. We want this to be the absolute best event you've ever had. And so I don't want to be cheap, just like I wouldn't hire a cheap coach, because I'm not looking for someone who can do it for bottom dollar. I'm looking for someone who can do it the best. And so, a lot of times putting out that kind of money, especially when you're just starting out, is scary. You're trying to figure out, will people even come? Will they get the value? Will I make sales to even cover the cost? But at the end of the day, if your plan is to grow, I like to think of it like a marketing budget, that, you're putting that money out into all of your marketing, and you're able to use that footage, that content, word of mouth from people that had an incredible time at your event year over year over year, as opposed to thinking of it as a one-time kind of investment that may or may not have a return.
Love that. I think another thing to think about too, when you consider doing a live event, and then especially justifying the expense of the live event, is I think in 2023 and beyond, the whole customer acquisition process has become really fractionalized. There's tons of different ways to do it that have never existed before. And they are very fast moving, and they go away quickly, meaning you can run Facebook ads and acquire a bunch of customers in this month, but next month it could be completely gone, right? So what people need to do, if they're not already doing it, is starting to really focus on retention and repeat business. And I don't know a better way. I personally know that I stayed in Russell's inner circle and spent lots of thousands and thousands of tens of thousands of dollars because his events were so dang good. From his large one all the way down to his, smaller, more intimate, high-end ones. So with that being said, I mean, that's a whole nother way to justify this, and it's a whole nother way for you to differentiate yourself and to keep and retain your clients and even provide more value, right? So, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of data to back that up, but what are you seeing as far as retention and just making your existing people happier and love you that much more?
Yeah, absolutely. We're at a unique time where we came out of COVID, so we kind of like, I would say we're a year out now, right? 2022 was pretty good. Most people were pretty social at that point. But there was 2 years where people didn't see each other in person. And there's still a lot of people that crave that in-person connection. Tons of people transition from in-person to online for work. So they're not like in an office working together anymore, especially in the entrepreneurial space. Like, when's the last time you sat in a room with other entrepreneurs, unless you went to a physical event that was hosted by like a coach, right? There's just you're not getting together with people all the time. So we're always on the internet. It's all digital. We lose that connection. We lose that trust. We lose that communication. And the energy that you feel when you're in a room of people that are just like you, it's incredible. It is like life-changing. And so it's so important to have that, to feel that. And I think now more than ever with don't get me wrong, I love all the AI technology that's coming out and all that kind of stuff. But it's distancing us as human beings more. The smaller the world gets because of the internet, the more distance we are as individual people. And so having the ability to bring your like family, your group of people, your tribe together at a live event is so powerful. And it creates that sense of community. It creates that longevity, that customer retention. When you've been to an event and you've met a bunch of people and you've made friends, you feel this like awkward sense of obligation to not let them down by quitting. You're like, I don't want anyone to know I quit this thing, right? Like I'm part of it. They saw me, I was here, and you feel obligated to show up next year because people are going to be like, where's that person? They were here last year. So from that standpoint, it is a little bit of NLP, I guess, but like it really is people wanting to feel that sense of connection and feeling that obligation to stay in it. So your retention by far shoots up. Absolutely. And it becomes a part of life. It really does. Like these are a big deal if they're done properly. So that's so awesome. I wanted to just before we wrap it up here, just interesting. You're an interesting person. Very, very cool life experiences. I want to know like what is something that maybe not a lot of people know about you. That's like a cool little tidbit about maybe a hobby or something that you do or that I guess others don't really know about. I don't know if it's like something that's continuing to be cool about me, but I mentioned it earlier. I grew up in the theater. I absolutely love to act and sing. And when I was 17, maybe 18, barely, I decided to audition for American Idol. So, my roommate and I actually, he and I ended up buying a house at 20, so that's cool too. But bought a house at 20 years old. But he and I drove from Arizona to California. It was like an 8-hour drive. We drove overnight because we only could get like 2 days off of work. And like went to the Rose Bowl, which is where the audition for American Idol was at the time. I think it was like American Idol 4. This was like a long time ago. I don't know how many seasons there are now, but it's been probably 20 years since then. And we auditioned for American Idol. I did not make it. That's neither here nor there, but I did it. And that was definitely like one of the scariest things, but also one of those things that like, I say it a lot, and I'm sure somebody said it before me. I'm not the original creator of this, but we almost always regret the things that we didn't do, but we rarely regret the things that we did. Even if they didn't turn out well, you're not usually like in the regret. You're like, probably shouldn't have done that thing, but it's not like the regret that you feel for a missed opportunity. And so I'm so grateful that that and so many other things in life, I have just, like I said earlier, like I have that inner thoughts of like, oh my gosh, how can I overthink this, and fears and doubts and worries. And especially like, there's just so many easy excuses. Oh, well, I can't really get enough time off work, or, I shouldn't do that thing because of X, Y, and Z. But instead, just leaping forward and going, hey, at least I tried. I didn't make it, but I have that experience. I have that memory. I tried. And I hope that maybe more people start to live their life that way, because you only get one.
Wow. That is some wisdom you're dropping here on the good side. That's so awesome. Where can people go to find more about you?
Yeah, so as far as just connecting with me, I am Chantelle Paige Turner with an I, Paige, and you can make all the jokes. You must be a real page turner if you ever write a book. I've written books, so there you go, laugh it up. I used to like people would say it to me all the time, and it was really annoying. And then I was like, I'm just going to embrace it. It's a great way to be remembered. So Chantelle Page Turner on almost all social media. If it's not that, it's Chantelle P. Turner, because the page didn't fit, depending on the platform. It's a long name when you put all those together. Or if you're looking to do live events, we are Turner Group LLC. You can find us that way. But yeah, so that's probably the best way to connect with me is just on social. Facebook, TikTok are probably my two biggest social platforms. If you try to find me on LinkedIn, it could be years before I get back to you. And on Instagram, it's hit or miss. I am not consistent, to be honest.
That's awesome. I can relate. Well, that's so cool. Thank you so much for your time today. You have an amazing story, really inspiring, and I know that you guys perform a very, very valuable service, which is amazing. So you guys should all go check her out. If you're going to do a live event or step yours up, definitely reach out to her and her team. And thank you so much for being on today and for being part of the good side.
Thank you so much. It was amazing to be here.